Joining us this morning is Greg Riley, of course. Now, one of the subjects, we usually like to talk about happy things, or we have a pet here with us, but today we have a sad topic to talk about. If you lose a pet, kind of the traumatic experience you have to go through, it's never a fun one.
And I mean, obviously I don't have a pet with me today because I figured that would be a little bit too distracting, but there was a viewer by the name of Marlena that asked me about a month ago, whatever happened to my dog Annie? Now, a lot of people probably watched the show for many years. I've been doing it for probably way too longer than I'm blessed with. But unfortunately, I had to put Annie down. She came down with congestive heart failure. And much like any other person, it was a very difficult decision for me to make. It was very emotional. And I'll be honest, I mean, I bawled like a baby afterwards. Miss Monroe and I have had that conversation once in our past.
It was about a year and a half ago. I called Greg, and my parents obviously kept it from me because they didn't want me to be upset. But I called Greg and I said, hey, help me get through this because it's sad. They're family members.
Family members indeed. And I think I've got a picture of Annie somewhere here if it hasn't already been shown. But well, no, actually, that's my dog, Moppet.
Moppet is good.
I love it. Moppet is up and ticking.
That's okay. Moppet's still with me. But anyway, some of the symptoms or some of the conditions that you may want to consider if you're facing this really heart-wrenching decision is what's the quality of life of your pet. And simple things can be from not wanting to eat anymore, not wanting to go out and play or act like how they normally do, sometimes losing their bowel control movements. Usually that will be a good indication. Not wanting to get up or move or anything like that. Those are some of the problems that you can gauge whether or not that pet, it's time. More or less.
And one of the things that sometimes people do, I've heard them say, well, I don't want to give them up yet, I want to hold on to them. And you need to think about the animal because they might be in some pain, and while you don't want to give them up, it's the time.
Absolutely. I would strongly really urge people to talk to your local veterinarian, get their take on it. More or less, they'll be a good barometer of, is it time, is it not time? There's a lot of times where people will come up to me and they'll be like, I think it's time. And I'll be like, well, is your dog or your cat eating? And they'll be like, yes. Is it still playing and so forth? Yes. And I would just say, well, why don't we try this other alternative instead and see if this works out and before we make this decision? Because a lot of people will go through a lot of guilt process in their life of, did I do it too quickly? Did I explore all my options? Obviously money is a big factor of how far do you want to explore those options.
And one of the other things you think about is when you lose that pet, you wonder, okay, do I need to have another one? I have kids. When's the time to buy another one? And I think that's your preference.
It really is up to your preference. There's a lot of people that immediately will go out and get another pet just to fill that void. And somehow they'll have that difficulty of, well, it's not exactly like, say, how Annie was. Well, of course not. It's no different than, like, say, trying to replace a person. That dog or that cat's going to have a different personality than your original pet.
Yeah, exactly. It's never an easy time.
It never is. And as far as what we're looking at heading into the summer months, we have to keep a close eye on our pets, especially our older pets, because of the heat and things like that. So weather, I hate to bring that into it, but it does play a big role.
It does play a big role. Obviously there's going to be a lot of heat stress going on, especially when the temperatures are rising. So it's a really good idea to keep an eye on your pet, especially during the hotter times of the month.
Just keep an eye on their quality of life.
Indeed.
All right. Well, before we had to break, if you'd like to see how you can get a hold of Greg Riley, we have that number there for you on your screen. You're watching News 10 This Morning.